Hello and welcome to On Point. I'm Karen Elle, and today we are here to talk about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a term that people seem to have heard, but they don't really know what it means. What comes to mind when you hear the term cryptocurrency? You probably have a lot of questions. It's in the cloud and it has monetary values, but exactly what is it? More specifically, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency and worldwide payment system. The system works without a central bank or a single administrator. The network is peer-to-peer and transactions take place between users directly. These transactions are verified by network nodes through the use of cryptography and recorded in a publicly distributed ledger called a blockchain. Bitcoin was invented by an unknown person or group of people under the name Satoshi Nakamoto and released as open source software in 2009. On Point's Savannah Palacio has more on the story.
Thanks, Karen. To begin, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Our first is Morgan Steckler, the VP of Coin IRA, and the second is Alula Zeryihun, a pre-accounting CSUN student who is one of the students responsible for bringing together finance executives, entrepreneurs, and professors for CSUN's Blockchain Summit in December. Thank you both for being here with me today.
Thank you. Thank you.
So recently, we have seen an uprising in Bitcoin, right? And it's been around for a while, but people like me and students all around campus hear the word Bitcoin, but don't really know how to explain it. Our On Point reporter, James Farr, went onto CSUN's campus and asked students what they had to say. Let's take a look.
Have you heard of Bitcoin before?
I have, but I do not know how to use those.
I have heard of it, yeah. Only recently, like it's the last few months.
Yes. Yes.
I have no idea, to be honest.
Do you know what it is, or can you explain it at all?
Is it online money? So that's what I think it is.
Okay, I'm not 100% sure about like all the details, but I know it's like electronic money.
No.
No clue.
Cryptocurrency, online currency, doesn't really have something backing it.
So some pretty typical reactions from students here on campus. In layman's terms, can either one of you explain to me what Bitcoin is?
You want to go?
Yeah, so Bitcoin is basically a digital currency. It's a cryptocurrency that basically is used for sending payments peer-to-peer. So a person can send money to another person without the need of a bank or any centralized authority to facilitate the transfer of the funds.
Great, and I think it's important to also understand blockchain when we're discussing Bitcoin, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You said earlier that you have a good definition for blockchain?
Yeah, so blockchain basically is, it's like a ledger. It is a ledger. It's a record-keeping mechanism or way of keeping records. The best way to kind of give an analogy or a way of like understanding Bitcoin or blockchain would be if you imagine like you were holding a piece of paper. If all three of us sitting here right now, we're holding a piece of paper, and while we're holding this piece of paper, I wrote something on my piece of paper. That information that I wrote on my paper would be on all of our papers, basically. So there's all that information is on that paper. It's going to be on all three of ours at the same time. And then there's no way of me changing it on my paper without changing it or making a change on yours, basically. So if you have like thousands of pieces of paper or millions of pieces of paper where all this information is being recorded at the same time, in order to be able to change all of the information, I'd have to have, a way of getting in there and changing a majority of it. And that's kind of
interesting, and Bitcoin doesn't work this way.
Bitcoin does,
okay.
And there are different forms of blockchain. But when you think of Bitcoin, that's the 800-pound gorilla. But you look at the blockchain of Bitcoin, and what it does is it runs by miners, and miners are computers run by people. And what they do is they verify every transaction, and they verify two things. They verify A, that the Bitcoin that's being in the transaction A exists, and B, that it's moving from point A to point B and only point A to point B. Now there are thousands of miners all around the world and simultaneously verifying this transaction. You need 80% of all of these miners to agree on this transaction to occur for it to appear on a blockchain. If it's anything less, it will show up as a negative transaction and not be allowed. Every 10 minutes or so, a block is sealed because it takes up a certain amount of size per transaction. It is then placed at the end of the block, and a new block immediately starts where new transactions form. So you have a history of every transaction that has ever taken place because they're all connected through that chain.
Interesting. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's different types of blockchains. So I think the method you're talking about, James was talking about, is more like towards like with Bitcoin. There's other blockchains that don't require cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin or any type of cryptocurrency. So it gets really complicated. It can, be used for different types of purposes as well. The idea of taking a bank out of the equation, for instance, which is what Bitcoin theoretically could do, you can technically apply that same concept to other areas as well. So if you could imagine, like for instance, like if I'm a migrant worker living, in the United States, for instance, I came from Mexico, for instance, and I want to send money to my family back home and remittances, normally I would send it through Western Union or some sort of wire transfer with a coin like Omaseo, for instance, which would then allow a person to purchase a coin and send that coin back to their family members back home. You could actually do it almost instantaneously with almost no fees, or as close to no fees as possible, basically.
Right.
And that's the whole goal of all digital currencies in Bitcoin. It cuts out all middlemen, whether it's a bank, it cuts out all wire fees, it cuts out VATs, credit card fees, and that's why there's over 800,000 companies around the world that currently use it. But it's also geared towards that 16% of the world that doesn't even have a bank account, because in this day and age, all you need is a cell phone, and it allows you as an individual to turn yourself into a bank. So you don't need that banking and running from 9 till 5, because it runs 24/7, 365, just as we as humans do the same.
Right, just open the app, right?
Right.
So who created Bitcoin, or who's responsible for its creation?
Well, the legend is of Satoshi Nakamoto, where a white paper was released at the end of 2008. There is no Satoshi Nakamoto, so a lot of theories say it could be an individual, group of people. You hear conspiracy people talking about it's someone from the future who wanted to change our world. I mean, you hear it all, but no one knows who Satoshi is.
Wow.
And also, like, when you look at like the history, even though it's a very brief history, right? Like Bitcoin 2008, 2009 was not that long ago. But like the motives behind, at least what was disclosed in the white paper, was really about allowing people to kind of be, liberated from a lot of the corruption at the time that people felt like was existing with a lot of the established institutions, basically, right? So the idea of like peer-to-peer transactions, the idea of not needing a centralized third party, basically, that was kind of a very revolutionary way of doing things. And I think today it's kind of, I was talking to someone recently, and it's like, in theory, that's kind of, what was the idea behind Bitcoin when it first came out. But today, the Bitcoin that we have seems like it's a lot different than the original Bitcoin. It's more, today it's not like we were having I was having a conversation with someone about this, but like the idea of like, today Bitcoin is more of like, people are holding it to store value as opposed to using it to buy things, right? It's kind of a speculative purpose that it serves today as opposed to its original intention, which is, to be used as a peer-to-peer, as a form of.
It is, and a lot of people are holding on to Bitcoin, especially with the value, and you've seen the recent increase in price, the decrease, but people are known as hodlers, or they hold on for dear life.
I'm sorry, hodlers?
H-O-D-L. It was actually from a misspelling from a number of years back, but it became a term in the industry where it's hold on for dear life. So it's people who will hold on, but of the 18, there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. The final Bitcoin won't come into creation until May 7th at 12 o'clock Pacific time in the year 2140. It's all based upon mining, and these miners, the ones who verify these transactions, every 24 hours, they are paid a settlement for doing the work, for using the energy, and they're granted a very small amount of Bitcoin that come into creation. Every year, that amount is halved, so it's down to the second of when the final Bitcoin will come out. But based upon early holders, if you will, in the early days, a few million of these Bitcoin don't really, they are floating away in the ether, so no one has them, and there's a smaller amount. I'd say maybe there's 30 or 40% of sure that are being held, but big businesses, the Fortune 10 and the Fortune 100 companies, are currently conducting and using it as business because it keeps them ahead of their competition. There's no wait times. You can do a $50 million transaction that Amazon does regularly to their European subsidiaries on a Saturday night, and you don't have to wait until Wednesday to continue business. So that's one of the advantages. It saves these companies 7-8% a year with all of those middlemen and those extra fees they no longer have to pay. So a lot of these companies maybe hold some, but they're transacting with quite a few. And
Right.
It's the purpose of what it is. It's a new form of money that works at the speed of technology.
Right. Who would you say uses Bitcoin more or cryptocurrency more? Businesses or just average, people, investors?
I'd say there's about 800,000 companies, with about 1,500 companies every day coming into it one way, shape, or form. You have more Fortune 10 and Fortune 100 companies currently using it. Amazon, Tesla, Overstock, GE, Microsoft, Zappos, Newegg, the list goes on and on.
How are they using it?
They're using it, they accept it as a form of payment, and they probably use it to pay their subsidiaries or their vendors or their partnerships around the world or domestically.
Interesting. So are they accepting, yes.
I was just going to say though, is there documented, accounted, records saying Amazon uses X amount of Bitcoin? Right,
You have to be a shareholder probably.
Well, what I mean, if it's a publicly traded company like Amazon. So the thing is, the claim that 800,000 companies are accepting cryptocurrencies and using it daily, what type of evidence is there to substantiate that claim? Because, it's one thing when you say, okay, we'll accept Bitcoin, but the thing is, it's still, I think personally, that there's still a lot to, for instance, like a Bitcoin, the transactions, right? It's like seven transactions per minute or per second, right? So it's slow compared to a Visa or all these other payment processing. That's a lot faster, for instance,
and
right?
Some of these other currencies as well.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, a lot of them are being used for exactly what they're supposed to be used for. I think what's really interesting is beyond Bitcoin, there's a lot of potential within the blockchain technology. I think companies, businesses started getting really interested within the blockchain area, especially after Ethereum came out. Ethereum is the #2 cryptocurrency, and Ethereum is more of a platform that allows, it's kind of think of it like an app store. Right, so you can build applications on this platform that could do a lot of things, like we're talking about being able to send money across borders and to be able to do all these different things. There's a part of it which is known as smart contracts. So smart contracts actually are programmable agreements between two parties or multiple parties where you can actually have terms like, for instance, I will send you X amount of dollars
for each stage of the contract.
Exactly. If you ship me this container full of shoes, once this container's worth of shoes are checked into the port, my account will automatically send you payment for that, right? So normally there would be a middle person that would confirm that the container was received and that payment was there. And so instead of having that middle person, you could eliminate them and you can have these two parties being able to interact with each other. Now the issue is with Ether, which is the coin that Ethereum uses. It's a utility token. It's between these, to allow these transactions to execute. It's not really a currency.
Right.
Ether is a way of that gets burned up when you're executing on the different stages of the contract.
And that's what Ethereum uses. Ethereum uses Ether.
Exactly.
So the thing is, I'm not going to go to Starbucks and go, hey, I'd like to buy a cup of coffee with some Ether, because that's not, it doesn't, I don't know, at least from my perspective.
Average consumers don't pay with Bitcoin.
No, but people do like Ethereum also, not because only because of the programmable blockchain and allowing you to regulate in which the rewards or settlements of a deal is agreed upon. But when people look at Bitcoin, they're seen as a store of value, just like Litecoin might be a store of value.
Or gold.
Ethereum, gold, exactly. They call it digital gold for a reason.
Right.
But Ethereum is what's going to give birth to the next Facebook, the next Google, the next Snapchat. It's the one that's going to birth the new internet because potentially, yes,
So
potentially.
different type of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, but it's all based on a different form of the blockchain, and that's where all these digital currencies, and there are many of them, but it's understanding the ones that are important and the ones that are making a difference and shaping our world. And the two that we've already talked about, at least Bitcoin and Ethereum, there's a reason why they're not going to be going away anytime soon. They're the ones that are leading the charge on this new form.
And the issue though is it's all about scalability at the end of the day too. I mean, Bitcoin right now is really just more of a store of value. It's a payment, it's slow for payments, but that's its only purpose. Ethereum has all these potential applications that you could build on it, and the purpose of the Ethereum Foundation, their goal is really to expand and to have this universal, this one global computer basically that you're running all types of transactions, all types of interactions, business deals, all types of transfers of value are occurring on this platform. But the thing is, to grow something like that, you have sustainability issues. The amount of energy, for instance, needed for Bitcoin to exist the way it is today in itself is unsustainable. And so I think in the future, hopefully it'll be some sort of, platform or some sort of, or many platforms that are out there or applications that are out there that can kind of minimize, the impact that we make on our environment as well.
When you look at Bitcoin and why everyone talks about Bitcoin in terms of, you think of Kleenex and as all brands, Bitcoin is the one that's been around longest, but it does follow the same traits as money. It's fungible, it's exchangeable, it's transferable, it's transportable, and has a store of value in and of itself. People think Bitcoin, I only have one Bitcoin, and it's 9,300, maybe around now, but Bitcoin could be divisible to 8 decimal points. It has a preparation of having a valuation of $1 million, so someone could still spend $1 at a McDonald's to buy their Big Mac. But it's also transportable, and you can store all the Bitcoin that exists today on your person, and you can travel to Europe. You can go to England or France, and you can trade it for a shekel or a franc or a euro, because all you have to do is buy it here with $1. You can go anywhere around the world, and it could be converted to that form of money.
And can anyone do this?
Anyone can do it. And that's part of what the allure of it is. You no longer need to be tied to a bank account. You no longer are being controlled by these walls. You won't become the bank, and you can go anywhere in the world, and you are allowed to convert it to wherever you want.
Now, how safe is this, or unsafe is this to use?
It's completely safe. It's a one-way transaction. So part of it is you don't have to worry about, chargebacks. You don't have to worry about fraudulent activity. But whether you're doing this, you have to know how to do it. You have to know how to use a wallet. You have to know how to perform a transaction. I mean, at least at Coin IRA, part of what we do is education. A lot of people are just jumping in with both feet without knowing what to do, or they're jumping in and mortgaging their house. These are all things that one should not be doing. There's a proper way of doing this, and it's trying to find the people who are there to educate. That's where at least we try and come in to educate, and whether you want to work with us, that's neither here nor there. It's knowing the fundamentals of why this is not going anywhere, so you can be better informed.
Alula, did you have anything to add to that?
I agree. I think that I think Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, there's definitely there's a lot of strong parts of benefits of using it, right? So when you think about if I had $1 million worth of gold, if I wanted to travel with $1 million worth of gold, I would need an army of security and trucks and all this other stuff. Probably if it's whatever, right? Big amounts. But Bitcoin, it's a lot easier, right? But the issues I have though is, for instance, you use the example of $1 worth of Bitcoin going and buying a cup of coffee or something. There's a few issues with it that still need to get ironed out. Sure. For instance, the fluctuation of the value is very unstable value. At times it could be worth $9,300 today, it could be worth $8,000 tomorrow, it could be worth $20,000 the next day, it could be worth, so it's very, it's unstable. Okay. And then also there's also tax aspects of it. I think that there's been talks about kind of coming up with ways of kind of fixing, I think was it $600 or less of cryptocurrency that you're being able to use. I think it won't be treated as a capital gain. So every time you're buying a cup of coffee, if you had to deal with the capital gains, the tax implications of that would be a pretty big headache. So I think there's still a lot of areas that need to be figured out in there. But I mean, personally, I think, I like the concept behind it. I think the idea of, having some sort of digital currency that could be allowing people to, have, banking, access to banking and things like that, I think is very important.
And regulation's key. I mean, we are only in the second inning of this ball game. It's really hit the shores of the United States and the world, and it's hit mainstream attention, especially over the last 3-4 months when you've seen this, rise that has become parabolic, and then the pullback. But it's understanding that regulations are coming into place. What we deal with retirement accounts. We deal with people outside of retirement accounts, but we have our KYC. We have 4 layers of licensing we have to go through, and we're licensed in every state domestically. We have to do, checks, and we have to do balances because the codes change literally every week, and we have to stay on top of it because we're doing it for the safety of clients. And we will not cross any fiduciary lines, and that's why people trust us. I mean, that's part of doing this the right way.
I definitely want to talk about regulations for cryptocurrency later on, but before we get to that, I just wanted to ask, how are regular consumers using Bitcoin? Are they investing? Are people trading? How is the everyday person able to get involved?
We deal with, at Coin IRA, we deal with people who have retirement accounts, whether it's a 401k or an IRA or pension. We would talk with one of our consultants, and we would determine their story. This is not this is not something that one should go all in on. This is very aggressive. This is speculative. This whole segment is new. So you do not want to, especially with a retirement account, go all in. You have your stocks and bonds, your real estate, your REITs, annuities, whatever it is. But if you're doing this, it's learning about a client and your story, learning about the segment that would make sense, how risk adverse or pro are you, and then we would help you roll that into a new IRA. And with there, we would go through a hard wallet solution and convert it Forex from US dollar into the digital currency of their choice and be stored in their IRA. So it's pretty streamlined. Takes a number of days from start to finish, and we help them with that.
Are there big corporations and businesses
in Bitcoin? More, yeah. There's more Fortune 10 and Fortune 100 companies. As I said, I believe Amazon. You have GE, Microsoft, Tesla. One of my friends last year, he bought it very early. He bought his Tesla with Bitcoin.
Wow,
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, you can. I mean, because he
talk about the future, right?
Talk about the future, maybe not the one in space, but it's but you have GE and Overstock and Newegg and Zappos. So someone can go online. You can go to a website, gyft.com, and it can convert. It accepts Bitcoin, and you can convert your Bitcoin into gift cards to over 400 retail locations.
Wow.
I mean, there's more use of it in day-to-day life than one can realize. And there's many documentaries that continue to come out on Amazon and Hulu that can help, that people should watch. There's many great movies and videos that will help supplement their education.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are the likelihood of big banks being like, all right, we're just going to let everyone, forget about the banks, let's just use cryptocurrency. What is the likelihood of them kind of being more submissive to that?
I think some of the banks, there are a couple of these currencies that are all aimed towards bank-to-bank transactions, ones like Ripple and a couple of these other ones. So there are already currencies that are geared towards it. I mean, banks are scared. You can see, the Jamie Dimons, the JP Morgans, the saying they're trying to spread fear, because they're a fiat currency and this is taken away from their bottom line. So you can see why, the banks are saying certain things and trying to scare them, if you will. People just need to see who's saying it and why. One needs to do the research and read between the lines.
Right, so is it safe to say that we'll be seeing some legislation come about for Bitcoin?
It's already starting. I mean, you can already see that in many ways. It's beginning to.
Yeah, but you have to understand too, though, like the idea of like Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies being decentralized and stuff like that. Like, it's difficult to regulate. I personally, I don't see like the banks or established like financial institutions like disappearing or anything like that. If anything, I see like some sort of integration of this technology, the blockchain technology, into what's already here today, and a transformation of what we have. Like when you think about like traditional fiat currency, when you think about cash. It's kind of, there's countries right now that already have gotten away from paper money and started going into digital currencies. And so I think that there could be a potential change in that. And I think also at the same time, like, it's really the big, thing that's here is really the blockchain technology. Like when you think about like all of the different investments, like I'm sure your portfolio consists of more than just Bitcoin, obviously. And so when you think about like all the purposes behind these cryptocurrencies, and you think of all the problems that they're trying to solve, whether it's Ripple trying to make cross-border transactions easier for banks so that they could send hundreds of millions of dollars across borders almost instantly at very little fees, or you think about Walton Coin, which basically deals with, it uses IoT technology. So you have RFID chips that actually are basically being, placed into items and being able to track, the movement of goods, right? So you have, there's another one called Venn that uses the same type of technology in luxury goods. So if you buy a Louis Vuitton purse, how do you know if that purse is actually a counterfeit or if it's real? Right? So they put this chip in there, and you can actually scan, the item, and it shows you the history of it, right? So when you think of supply chain, global supply chain, and the effects of blockchain technology and how you can keep track of everything, I think IBM actually has a really great project that they're working on with Walmart. right, with Walmart. And what they did is they're actually able to track, the movement of food through the supply chain, basically. So for Walmart, if you bought, like normally if you bought, let's say some spinach, right? They had a huge recall of spinach, right? And they had to take millions and millions and millions of pounds of food or whatever off the market because they couldn't identify where the spinach with the E. coli or whatever was coming from, right? So they had to get rid of it. But if you had it on the blockchain, you can actually identify which particular farm things were coming from. You could pinpoint things a lot better, and you're able to go there and fix that, and be able to just pull that section, not all of it. You don't have to take a million cars off of the or off the roads and a huge massive recall when there's only 10,000 cars that have a part that's a defect, right? And so they actually today they were here at CSUN speaking. That's one of the points that they had brought up, which I thought was very interesting. But at the same time, they were able to accomplish this without a cryptocurrency, with the established system. Right, so that's the interesting point right there. The blockchain technology is something to, not overlook as well. I think I got involved with cryptocurrencies early on. I started a group at CSUN. It was 3 students, myself, and 2 other people. Right now, there's 100 people in there. We call ourselves a blockchain investment group. That was just for fun. But I'm starting to have a shift in my perspective towards what this whole technology is all about. And I think cryptocurrencies, I'm not at any undervaluing them. I think that there's a lot of really great projects. You're definitely, you're naming off some really great projects and stuff. But I also want to say that there's also something beyond cryptocurrencies as well. And I think our CSUN community is definitely going to benefit from it. We actually, and not to talk too much, but there is actually a club we're starting here, which will be called the Blockchain Society. We're working with IBM and a few other organizations to kind of launch it off here, but we're trying to model ourselves off of like a blockchain at Berkeley or one of the great groups that are out there, and we really want to lead with the innovation side here on campus as well.
Awesome.
And you said actually one thing about taxing, and you have to see on the non-qualified that there are people who are trying to evade, and that's something I think the government's going to start coming down on personally. I do think that is something that is needed for people not reporting. But when you're dealing at least with retirement accounts, these are on the radar. So codes and compliance is key, and you're already dealing with funds that are on and under an umbrella that someone's worked hard, and so it's under a regulated format. So that's where we help people, where you're dealing with funds that are. It's easier to work with because you don't have to worry about anything being hidden.
Interesting.
So that there's a big fundamental on that versus people associating with dark web or not paying taxes and things like that.
Got it.
So
thank you. Well, thank you both. That it looks like we are all out of time. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Red shirt, blue shirt, yellow shirt, oops. Yellow pants, red pants, green pants, oops.
Thank you for watching On Point. You can follow us on social media at CSUN On Point. You can hear us on KCSN 88.5 FM on Sunday mornings at 5:30. You can watch us on Santa Clarita Valley Television on Sunday evenings at 5 and LA 36 at 8:30 Friday mornings. For all of us here at On Point, I'm Karen Elle.